Hey everyone, it's Gabby
and Dani
and Manny,
and you're listening to Oye, Let's Talk. Hey everyone, so welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a sore subject for some or maybe an insightful one for others. It's relationships, and we're not talking about friendships. We're talking about that lovey-dovey gooey stuff.
El amiguito, como diría tu mamá.
Ish.
¿Qué tal tu amiguito, tu amiguita? ¿Qué tal?
You know, since we're getting close to el novio season or la novia season for Manny, we thought it'd be a good time to just offer up our experience and some advice. So we actually bring a lot of different perspectives to the table because we're each in different types of relationships. So Manny, from what I understand, you met your girlfriend very organically, sweaty, and in the gym.
This is correct. I met my girlfriend a little more than a year ago now at our CrossFit box, which is now closed, by the way. It's the pandemic closed it out. And yeah, we met organically. It wasn't on a dating website, which, at the time it was weird. It's difficult. And we'll talk about it. It's difficult for us to meet someone now organically if it's not in school. Leaving school, you're kind of no longer in that pool of people your age that are highly educated with the same maybe values and traditions as you because you've been going to the same school. Leaving school and not being in that population, it kind of becomes a little more difficult to meet people that you can relate to that well. So organically meeting someone at the gym is kind of crazy. And it's very special, and we always talk about it. And we've been, depending on when this podcast is released, we're about to be almost 1 year. So a great accomplishment.
Congratulations!
What month is it?
At the end of November.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we're listening to this in November, past November, it might be a year. But as of right now, technically almost. But yes.
Nice. Well, I just turned a year in September. He and I actually met him. Yes. He and we met each other at the University of Florida at a friend of a friend's party. But we never had a conversation. I just knew him because people would always talk about him. He was popular, I guess, in my eyes, because everyone rushed to say hi to him at the door, and he just seemed to know everyone. But at the time I didn't think anything of it. I was just oh, okay, some kid walked through the door, great. I went on with my day, with my night. But then it's funny because we graduated the same year. I didn't know that he was my same age. Honestly, I didn't know anything about him. All I knew was that he was Venezuelan and that people knew of him. Then I later find out that he used to be the president of Venza, which is the Venezuelan club at UF. And my sorority sister Tefi is really close with him. And so when I had the opportunity to move to Chicago for a job, Tefi reached out to me. She's like, hey, I know you don't know a lot of people in Chicago. You should reach out to Nacho. That's his name, or his nickname. And I was like, no, that's so weird. I don't even have him on social media. That's so strange. He probably doesn't even remember me. It's fine. I'll meet people. Totally cool. If we ever hang out, that'd be cool. But it's fine. I can be on my own. And then long story short, other friends of friends started coming for grad programs or job opportunities. And then we ended up forming a small little group, and we became really good friends. And then he finally asked me out formally, and the rest is history.
So what's asking you out formally?
So we had at this point in time been hanging out a lot, just us two. It was normally 4 of us or 6 of us or 8 of us, but it mostly ended up being just us two for whatever reason. But I never thought anything of it because at the time I was really hung up on somebody else that I was trying to get over. And and so
I hope he knows that.
Oh, he does, of course, because I relied on him to just to talk things out and get the male perspective. He was my person to lean on.
Look at Nacho
and
now.
He would and so he would tell me about his problems too. I knew the girl that he liked at the time. We were just friends, legit. And then one day and then I just felt we were getting a little too close. You know what I mean? When you're texting a lot and just randomly asking you what's up, how's your day been, how's your week, and just remembering little things here and there that I was But I didn't want to get too wrapped up in my head because in the past, I feel like I tended to do that, or people would tell me that I got ahead of myself. So like for the first time in my life, I was kind of like, no, we're just friends. Like, I'm not going to make this a big deal. I'm not going to psych myself out. We're cool. So when he was like, hey, like, what are you doing this Saturday? We should grab dinner. I was like, this isn't a date. This isn't a date. We're just friends. We do this all the time. It's fine. Why does it sound so
It was
formal to me?
totally a
But it's
date.
fine. It was totally a date. But I ended up saying yes because I don't know. I liked hanging out with him. He was fun. He made me laugh, all this stuff. So I was like, whether or not it's a date, I know I'm gonna have a good time, and that's what mattered to me at the time. And
Aww.
then he confessed everything, and I knew I was right, but I was also like scared because I wasn't fully over this other person at the time. We talked it out. I ended up giving it a chance for the both of us because I did feel like a spark, or that something was there, but I think I was just scared. Like, I was at a point in my life where I was like, F love, like, love sucks. Like, I was always the person that believed in love, and I love, and I love hearing stories and stuff. But at that time, I was so down
Aww.
that, yeah, I legit was like, nobody touch me, nobody look at me. Like, I'm going to focus on me, because I think that's important too, like, to take time for yourself and just like reevaluate like what's important to you. And I think that things come when you least expect them to, when you least want them to, and that's kind of what happened to me.
I just, Gabby,
Go ahead.
before you jump in, I'm so sorry. Dani said something really funny, that she got invited on this date and she's literally thinking nothing of it. And I'm going to pose both of you guys this question, but I want to bring it up now. Is this like a common theme? Because I remember asking my girlfriend, we went on a froyo yogurt date. That was our first date. And she insists she did not consider that a date because she didn't know I liked her, and it was just us being friends. And I was like, no, that was our first date. I asked you on a date to go get frozen yogurt. You can get frozen yogurt with any of your friends. I'm like, no, I specifically asked you. So
I think it's like, it's multiple things, right? I think that it's the way that you ask it. I think that a lot of guys, for whatever reason, they call it a hangout. Like, oh, let's hang out.
Because that's a
Let's
safe
just...
word.
Why?
Because if
Yeah,
you
that's
don't
the
like them, then they're like, oh, we just hung out. As opposed to
Yes.
you went on a
Claro,
we're
date.
scared
of
of
course.
rejection.
Of course, but at the same time, it's like you tell your best girlfriend to hang out. You know what I mean? Like, there's no distinction for us when we hear you tell your best guy friend, your best girlfriend that, and then you tell
That's
us to hang
fair.
out. So
Fair.
I can't differentiate.
I'll give you that.
And then a lot of people are like, oh, well, did he pay for it? Because if he paid for it, then, and I don't buy that. Like, I personally, I'm the type of person that I like to split it 50-50. I sometimes like it when he like invites me to, and then like I'll buy like dessert or whatever. Like, we like balance it out, if that makes sense. I'm not all for, oh, he's the guy, so he must always pay. No. But I also agree that like the girl should let herself be like treated like a princess sometimes or whatever. But
So if he treats you, is it a date? Regardless if you imposed or not, or if he offers to pay?
see, I don't think so. I don't think
So
so.
this guy literally needs to be verbatim. Let's go on a date. We can't say hang out. Is that
Okay,
the
well,
lesson
to be
learned?
fair, in my situation, I've always been
We need to
like,
get Gabby her time. We
yeah,
can't.
go ahead.
Gabby,
Go ahead, Gabby.
Thanks for
please
talking.
introduce your amazing fiance, because I love him.
I know.
I'm so glad, because most people do love him. And I love him too.
Most.
No, I've dated a lot of people that, not a lot of people, but I've dated people that
Wow, this is
others did
awkward.
not care for. So you know what? If you're an ex and you're listening
Louis,
to
you're a
this right
keeper.
now,
Shout out to
just
Louis.
know.
I hope Lewis knows all that.
He does. Because I'm actually going to talk about how we got together too, because it's interesting. But my love story started 5 years ago. We actually made 5 years last month in September.
Hey.
And about a year before that, we were in the talking stage. Thanks.
Oh my God, let's talk about the talking stage. That kind of like goes back to Manny's question.
Which
too.
that's, trust me, I'm gonna get to it, because that's what made like a lot of this confusing. So essentially I made Lewis talk to me for about a year. It's more like 9 to 10 months. And then he asked
Wait, you said you made him talk to you.
so because he asked me to be his girlfriend at least twice in that period, or like asked like what we were, and I was kind of like, oh, we're talking because
She was playing hard to
No,
get.
in all honesty, like no,
Gentleman twice, this poor man. Imagínate that he would have like knelt down and asked her for her hand in marriage, and she was like, come back to me.
listen. Well, let me speak. Let me get my story out. It's going to make a lot more sense. So basically in college, I was kind of like talking to some other dude who like really wanted me to be his girlfriend, but something inside of me said no. And I didn't feel like he took me seriously. So I was kind of waiting that point. And I'm a little scared to commitment. Or I'm a little scared to commit because I feel like commitment is a very big thing. I know some people can just be like, oh, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, like they can go after a few months and do that. But for me, like I need to be sure because if we are in a relationship, it is a long haul. I have never had a relationship that's been less than a year. So I don't do like the few months thing. And that
Preach.
being said, like I was talking to this guy and then Lewis kind of came along and he and I just kept bumping into each other and we were getting along really well. And I can kind of tell, like, I could tell that he kind of liked me, but like I was not really sure. I was like too busy dealing with something with the other dude, basically. And the other dude asked me to be his girlfriend again. And lo and behold, I found out that he was like talking to someone else. Really awkward moment for me because the girl kind of confronted me like uneasy. And she's like, yeah, I heard about you. He told me that you two were good friends. And I was like, I've never heard about you. This is awkward. That being said, I felt really bad about like how unknowingly I was involved in like someone else's shindig, their thing. And I told myself I never wanted to be that kind of girl and like I needed to take a break from some of this. So even though like me and this guy were not serious and like we weren't technically dating, he was always around and people knew that we were a thing. But I guess another subset of like, I guess the college community thought that he was a thing with someone else. And I didn't want to like jump from that guy and kind of like jump to another guy, if that made sense. So that's kind of like why I had Lewis talk to me for a little bit. I lost some interest in like being in a relationship, but I also felt really, really bad about like how I probably impacted another girl's view. And then that guy also jumped to another friend who ended up being a mutual friend of mine. And I was like, wow, he's just jumping girls. So yeah, needless to say, not that great of a person. I was really hurt, but I also looked at my image because people looked at me a certain type of way. And some people even warned Lewis like not to date me or whatever because it looked messy from where I was at. Yeah, believe it or not. So because he and I were kind of like we met in the spring, we started talking, we were going to go each to our internships in one summer. So with that being said, I was like, look, if we talk and we last throughout the summer, then I'll consider this more. Because to me, like we're far away, this makes more sense. And then
Gabby, for some context, this was your sophomore year.
yeah, this was
right?
my sophomore year with Dani.
So you were still young. Like if you think about it, we were babies.
Oh,
What?
yeah.
We were 19, 20?
Yeah, I was a child. So when you think about like when Lewis and I met, I'm 25 now and I met him when I was 20. I wasn't even allowed to drink yet. So that being said, like we've gone through a lot in our relationship. And I remember it was during Hispanic Heritage Month that I asked him finally, like, hey, do you still want to be serious with me? Like, do you want to be my boyfriend? And it was really cute. Like there was this tunnel that you could paint at UF. So I painted it on the wall and I asked him in a really nice way because I felt like really lame because I kind of had rejected him a few times and he stuck around.
I didn't know this story.
Yeah.
I
This is
remember
so
that.
It was
cute.
really cute, to be honest. And like I just want to give him all the credit because it made it a lot easier to ask someone when you kind of knew that they would likely say
Aw.
yes. And I give him a lot of
Yes.
credit for sticking around when I was trying to like figure out some stuff. And he was really open. I guess part of the greatest challenge of this love story, apart from like all of our moments of long distance, we currently do not live together, we live in different states and we're engaged, is that he was open to me and said that he was undocumented. And he's like, I just want to be really upfront with you, like I'm dating you not because I'm trying to find papers or because I'm trying to get married quickly. Like he's a very religious person, he believes in God and he stays very true to his Catholic faith. And he said, like, for me, like a marriage is sacred, like you don't do that just for convenience. And he's like, I understand why some people may feel pushed to do so, but I'm not at that point yet. Like I'm into you, I like you, I want to talk to you, I want to get to know you more. Like I have no other motives in this. And that's kind of like someone who's upfront with you in that moment about something so like private and probably a little too serious for the stage that we were at. That I think is what like led us here. So my perspective to the table is like navigating the whole DACA situation, being undocumented, and like the pressure of other people looking like at first looking at us as if we were only together because he needed papers. And then also like the whole long distance aspect, like beyond college, we've never lived in the same town at the same time. So the fact that I'm engaged now, we're like picking out a date and stuff,
Yay.
like
I am so happy
it's
for
been a
you.
journey the last 5 to 6 years. And that's my love story. I did the talking stage, Dani. I'm not ashamed of it. It's my favorite stage personally in dating.
Really?
Yeah, that's when you get to know someone and like you can cut it if it's not cutting out for
I
you.
guess. I guess. Well, fun fact talking about the talking stage really quickly. He says that we talked for months, and in my eyes, like when I started to realize it was like after the summer break, because I went to Europe. We actually both went to Europe, but he did like this like long walk with his mom, El Camino de Santiago. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. And I went with my family to like just tour Europe, and then when I came back, we just like hit it off like never before, I guess. Like we became really close. And that's when I started like thinking about it. But in his eyes, he was like, oh, like we've been talking for months. Like I was like, wait, what? Huh? So I think like it's just funny to see how that unravels when you think something of a situation and the other person's like, no.
Yeah,
Like,
like what's the talking stage? When are you dating? When is it
yeah.
official? What's
Yes,
legit? What was it like
yes.
for you, Manny?
And I feel at the very beginning, I feel like we were on different pages, and it has to do with what you said earlier, Gabby, on being afraid of commitment. And I was definitely there. And I feel like a lot of guys are. And I've never really heard it from a girl saying like I have, commitment issues, because I feel it's mostly like a guy thing, the guy not wanting to commit.
Mhm.
But before that year, I was 25. Before then, I wasn't really to like, hey, I'm ready to settle down. But that year, I was like, okay, I'm ready to, seriously date, and like this is what I want to do. Like this is for the long term. I'm not going to be BSing or wasting anybody's time or my time. So I feel like at the beginning we were on different pages because I was still not as committed as she was. And it was scary because at first I didn't understand why, and I was scared that if I wasn't as committed as she was in the moment, I would kind of lose her. And I feel like I just had to, she knew what she wanted, and it looked like I didn't know what I want, and nobody wants to be in that situation. At the beginning, I wasn't we it was there's a lot of gray areas when you're going back to what you guys are talking about in the whole gray area. At the very beginning, it's a lot of gray areas, and if both of you guys aren't telling each other where you are, I think there could be a lot of confusion where one person thinks you're one place and then the other person might be, not there. But eventually, that fixes itself, and we're at a really good point right now. And I feel like just being able to communicate, I know it's so cheesy and we're not experts, but communication is just, it's so simple and it's so obvious, but at the same time it's very hard. It's very hard because sometimes you don't want to say something in the moment, or you'll keep it for later, you just don't even mention it, or I don't know, there's
Or
so
they
many
take it
things
the
where
wrong way, or you meant it like in a different format and it had a deeper impact than what you
right,
realized.
right, right,
Mhm.
right, 100%. So yeah, that was just my experience. And also, dating, like that, Gabby, you've been dating since for 5 years. This is I'm at an older age where it's different dating. I think it's different dating when you're 20, 21.
For sure, yeah.
And now when I'm, post college, you're a little older, you're a little more set in your ways. It's, dating is different, and the way that you meet people, and also in the way that you interact with them, and it's going to be completely different.
I think also as time goes on, you learn to mature in the way you think about things and the way you view the world. And similarly, the other person, like I'm a firm believer that you attract pretty much what you are, what you believe in, what your core values are. And that's, I guess, one of my personal advices is that if what matters to you the most isn't something that matters to them, I think that relationship might not work. Whether that's
Fair point.
politics, whether that's religious values, whether that's, if you're a very family oriented person and the other person is not. um yeah, it's just, I don't know, other than communication, like I'm a firm believer that communication is key too. and that you're not too much. I think for some reason, and I'm going to go off on a tangent for a quick second, but I think that a lot of girls, for whatever reason, think or feel like they're too much when they explain themselves, because I think a lot of guys, for whatever reason, or maybe that's just my case, but I've heard it from a lot of friends too, where guys tell you that, oh, like when you try to communicate something, that you're too much. And my advice is that don't look at it that way. Maybe the other person isn't enough for what you bring to the table.
That was really good advice. Like, if you ever feel like someone's
Thanks.
telling you you're too much, maybe it's just because they're not enough. Just to paraphrase.
Ooh.
I love that.
Se tenía que decir y se dijo.
Mic drop. But on that note, actually, like, what I guess, you know how people kind of, I don't want to say take on roles, but or play a role in a relationship, but you know, like, what is your involvement in your relationship, if that makes any sense? Like, what role do you play? Because, like, at least for me personally, to explain myself a little bit better, like, Lewis is very chill. I'm definitely the more volatile one, the one that like wants to push or plan or like do the next thing. I'm definitely the one that like always schedules too much on my plate. Don't ask me about finances. Like, don't ask me to calculate the tip. Like, I know there's a tip calculator, but like Lewis can do it in his head, so I'm okay. So he's the person that is very like can do his spreadsheets and understands and very much a planner and like can get things done but needs direction, and I'm the creative type. So that's kind of like how our relationship dynamic is and how it works out. Like, what is it like with you all?
Same. Same. And I think that Lewis graduated as an engineer too, right? Yeah, it's an engineer
Yeah.
thing. That's all I got to say about it.
Well, I'll provide a different perspective on this one. I feel like we're both, me and my girlfriend are kind of, we have that planning personality. So we both like, we're both the type of people to go on a trip and have like that hour by hour
Oh, that sounds amazing.
itinerary. Yeah. So it's really good that we both work like that and we can trust each other to like, hey, if you're going to plan something, I trust you that you're going to plan it how I would want to plan it. And if I plan it, she knows I would plan it how we would want to plan it, you know? So that's a good thing. I'm trying to think of, I don't know. I feel like there are roles to be played, but at the end of the day, you need to be giving that same energy that your partner's giving. Wouldn't you
No,
guys agree?
facts for sure. Like, and
But
sorry,
oh,
I was
no,
gonna
go
go
ahead.
into that too, like how his personality has impacted mine. So I become better at spreadsheets, managing my time, etc., because that's rubbed off on me. And Lewis, I tell him this all the time, like how proud I am of him that over time he's become a little more open-minded. And
Oh,
because he started on, he's like, again, being extremely Catholic, he's like, oh, Catholicism's like it. And then he started understanding more like, well, how people can have different ways of thought. And now he'll listen to podcasts and like read articles that I may send him. And he doesn't love reading. So I know I can't send him something too long, but like I can bring stuff to his attention. And it's nice to see how like we make each other better in these aspects. So he'll calm me down. I'm very outgoing. He's more of an introvert. But because I drag him along places, like he's learned and tried new things that he hasn't always done. And then he's kind of taught me like how to like make the best out of what you have. And he's very appreciative. So again, like I've learned a lot of gratitude with him. So those are just some of the changes, like despite like our differences and what we bring to the table, it's also like how we share the meal, if that makes sense. Like him helping me grow as a person, and it's been consistent, which I really appreciate.
100%. And I think that's a sign of a healthy relationship because I feel like that with my relationship as well, where that other person is building up with you. This person's adding so much to your life, and that feels good. And I'm privileged, and we're all privileged to be in really good, healthy relationships that we all feel like that. But there may be people out there who are not having that same reciprocity, and that should be canceled because that other person should be helping you grow. They should be adding things to your life. And, you know, you're your own individual person, and you can be, but that person needs to add and not subtract from your life for sure.
100%. They need to be supportive, I think might be the word that encompasses it all. And I actually read, like when we were doing a little bit of research on this, finding like an expert advice, so it's not just my own. There's this guy, his name is Matt Lundequist. He's the founder of Tribeca Therapy, so I'm assuming he's a therapist. And one of his things was like, stop trying to be each other's everything. And I think that's very important too, that I think that while you both can share similar values and similar ideas and creativity and support each other in everything that you do, I don't think that you should be necessarily consumed by each other's presence. And I think that a lot of people get lost in themselves when they're with somebody else, and they forget about their friends, they forget about their family. They become into this, they turn into this other person, whether it's for good or for bad. But I do think that it's important to still maintain your individualism, if that makes sense.
No, 1,000%. And I feel like that's something, going back to Manny's point, like the whole commitment aspect. Like part of the reason why I'd be so nervous to commit is because like I go hard with what I commit to. And I do occasionally lose myself. Like I struggle to find the balance between friends and relationship, or like other things in my relationship. And if some, I, not to say like a relationship grows stale, but if I'm used to having someone or something there, like I may not pay as much attention to it because I'm so goal oriented that I'm rushing to the next thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
might get used to, for lack of a better example, like, oh, Lewis is always here. He's always by my side. So, like, let me go try and chase this promotion, or let me keep working. Like, I don't separate certain aspects of my life or give things the time that they need. And the part of the reason that you make a commitment is to say, like, it's just you and me, or we're going to keep working at this. And the problem is that, as I can say this being in a long-term relationship, that it's really hard to keep like the relationship fresh, or not to let it grow stale over time. And your part of the commitment is making sure it doesn't, like keeping up with what they're doing with their lives, their goals, how are you pushing them forward, how are you all making each other better, etc., while still being your own person. And that's just going on to Dani's point. Something else I wanted to address too, like if we're going to be talking about experts, I'm gonna whip mine out now. A, a
Do it.
clinical psychologist, Joseph Silona, he actually has like a lot of good advice. So I would recommend that you all like kind of look him up on Google if you wish to know a little bit more about his style, if that makes sense. But something that I think people struggle with is like, how do you bring up an issue? Or how do you talk about something? Because like things can be so misinterpreted, going back to the communication topic. And he says like, this is going to sound like really lame, but either do a weekly or a monthly dinner or like event that you kind of only talk about your relationship, its issues and its goals. So like kind of timing in. And he says this is valuable advice for younger people as like you're navigating the real world and maybe your work life or your first or second job as you're establishing yourself. Because checking in on a relationship isn't the same way like in college everyone was around, like it was easy to just maybe get lost in your studies. But as an adult, like you need to separate time for a lot of things, so might as well separate time to do a relationship check-in. And he's like, it sounds lame, but if you do this homework now, or like have a day that you set it and bring it up, it takes off some of the anxiety of having to figure out when you're going to bring it up. And then it's a lot better to be like, we're going to have this dinner to talk about us, as opposed to maybe sabotaging a romantic dinner later when it was just meant to be celebratory or just spending a good time.
Mm-hmm. You're like mentally prepared for it, and you're both in there with an open
Yeah,
mind.
and you're again the whole being mentally prepared, like, oh, we know we have this date and time, like it could be a really nice date, or it's at least an open moment for us to talk about these things. And I haven't exactly done it like an open dinner or whatever, but I'll tell Lewis like, hey, I really need to talk about like my career goals and like any major changes, because you're a factor in everything too. And so we'll set aside a phone conversation or a FaceTime to talk that out. Or now with wedding planning, instead of just our usual like dates or FaceTime dates, we'll say, okay, let's schedule this time just to talk about wedding stuff. Because it could turn into a heated conversation. Not that he and I ever really fight, but if like I'm getting stressed out for whatever reason, like at least he's in that mindset. He's like, oh, I'm mentally preparing to make sure like you can understand these numbers. Or okay, let me go look at like what you were discussing in terms of your job. Or for him, it's, hey, I'm trying to plan out my vacation days. Like, can we sit down and like have dinner together and talk about the best days that I should request off to help match your schedule? And that has just helped immensely. It's advice that I've applied. So again, sounds lame, doesn't have to exactly be a dinner, but I highly recommend just separating the time and being open about what the conversation is going to be about.
No, I told Gabby, I actually really, really like that. Like, and I'm gonna adopt that. And I kind of had that maybe like 2 or 3 days ago. We kind of just had it unexpectedly. We went out like to go eat, and we were talking about a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a really good thing where you're just celebrating your moment and this moment in your relationship, and you're just celebrating the love that you guys feel for each other. So it doesn't have to be even a bad thing. Since everyone's dropping their expert advice, I will mention mine too. And it's a book that I've mentioned so many times, and Dani, you've read it too. It's The Defining Decade by Meg J, and she is a clinical psychologist for 20-year-olds, so for people in their 20s decades, and she outlines what a big factor it plays for the rest of our lives. And she does have a whole chapter on love, and one of the things I did want to mention is she mentions the cohabitation effect. She says that couples who live together before marriage tend to be actually less satisfied with their marriage and are more likely to divorce than if you hadn't lived together before you getting married. So don't think that you have to live with somebody before getting married to them. It could actually be a deterrent.
Detrimental.
Yeah, detrimental, because what she details is kind of like there's different commitment levels. If you're just living with someone before marriage and then afterwards you do get married, those commitments change, but then it might not be apparent and those commitments won't happen. So it might feel like you're living in a sub average marriage, you know?
I get it. There's like less of that
Yeah.
feeling of change, but the commitment did
Right.
change.
Right, exactly. And that commitment doesn't change.
I think that also stumbles upon the fact that I think the reason why a lot of people get divorced or their relationships fail is because they take each other for granted and they forget like what made them so special to begin with. Like you kind of like what Gabby said, at some point that you get used to the person, you feel like they're always there, and you lose that sense of value.
Yeah, 100%, for sure.
So I kind of wanted to hop into and say, like, we've all kind of embedded like our challenges and whatnot, but like, how has it been navigating your respective relationships? Like, if you had to think of like one super awesome, great thing like that you learned in the relationship that you had now, and like one challenge that you're like, wow, like I didn't foresee this, but I think we've grown from it. Like, what would it be?
I'm just gonna say I became less selfish, and more giving to my relationship, and making that a priority, and making sure that my girlfriend always feels like the queen that she is, and
No.
I think that's another advice: make your significant other always feel like they're that special person every day. Like it could be something small that you do for them or something big. You always want to make sure that you're their king or queen.
That was sweet. That's good.
You think so? You think my girlfriend will approve?
Yeah.
Of course.
She might think you're.
We approve for her.
No, I think you're a little full of shit, but you know what? We'll take it.
No, I'm editing.
You're a little
out.
stuck up at the moment. Let me
Guys,
tell
I
you.
need this podcast to be good.
I'm just thinking like in terms of long distance, like I'm still doing distance. We've been doing distance since 2017. And I think we've like really learned a good rhythm. And it really helped me, which is gonna sound lame, because all of my friends are far away now too. I don't have as many friends like here right next to me all the time. So having a long distance relationship and like learning from Lewis and like his, not necessarily his demands, like obviously he's a different priority than some friendships, but realizing like, oh, like maybe I should check in with that other friend and do a FaceTime, or like having more of a balance with people far away, because I was very much like, if I can't see you, like I'm very bad at communicating via text, and like I don't really like doing FaceTime a whole lot, or I fall asleep watching movies together and etc. But he kind of taught me like how to apply those things like beyond our relationship, and how being committed means like getting better at things that you may not be good at, and realizing like that's not always okay. So it's not okay for me to always forget to answer text messages. So I've gotten better at it, y'all. And as far as like, I guess a challenge, like to be honest, y'all, the DACA thing was never really a big issue, but now that we're actually like committed to getting married, making that commitment, just kind of navigating that, like in terms of family, like coming from a Hispanic family, and most of them are Cuban, so like there's different privileges coming to this country when you're Cuban. They didn't understand like how can someone be undocumented. Like I think my family very much had the mentality of like they chose that life or they did that on purpose. And Lewis was very young when he came here. He really had no say in his life, and he got a college education that he had to pay for, because if you didn't know, if you're undocumented, you can't apply for loans and a lot of scholarships and stuff. So he did a lot basically on his own, which my parents obviously appreciated. They're just very confused and very concerned about their daughter getting involved with someone without papers, which is why I said at the beginning, like, Lewis is very upfront, because my parents caused concern on that. Like, do you really want to date someone? He says that now, but what is he going to say in a few years, and etc. And now they come around that they're like, oh, cool, you guys are getting married. My mom texted me, do you like this dress or that? I haven't made any decisions, FYI. It's only been about a month.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been 5 years. I hope that they approve by now. I hope that they understand what kind of person he is. And I appreciate that he was so honest with you in a time where maybe he was still trying to get to know you and didn't really know how you were going to maybe react to that, but he was willing to put himself out there. And I think that's admirable.
Oh, I hope he hears that. But my parents were the challenge, to be honest. It wasn't Lewis.
I mean, sometimes it happens, like where parents are, they tell us what we don't want to hear, and maybe they don't understand where we're coming from. I think that
Yeah,
happens a
it
lot
definitely
too.
came from a place of concern, but it also made me realize, like, not that Lewis is really all that much darker tone. He's Panamanian, like my grandmother, so he resembles her skin tone. But my mom like admitted to me, she's like, "Oh, I thought that you would hopefully like meet a nice white guy at UF, or that you'd be with like maybe not a Hispanic, but like I do like that you are with a Hispanic because they bring that culture." Like, as I didn't date around too much, but she was concerned about the culture being too different that we couldn't relate, but she also didn't want me to deal with, like, I guess in her mind, what some Hispanics deal with, like the machismo. And
Which is valid.
well, I understood that. She's like, you're an educated woman, and I just didn't want you that to not be part of your life. Like, I really never wanted you to be the girl that went to school and then decided that, or the husband decided like that wasn't enough, like that they were still more than you when you overcame and did so much for yourself too. So my mom was just stuck in the place of like empowerment culture and then still kind of wanting me to
Yes.
carry the culture and traditions in whatever I do, which I recognize as a parent. Like, I can't speak to that because I'm not a mom, but I'm sure like it was nerve-wracking and understanding their perspective a little bit more. Like, if your kid is dating anyone, there's just a lot of baggage that comes with it. There's like, your mind races a mile a minute, like, what's gonna happen, what does this mean, and like, how will it impact them? And now my parents know I'm with the Hispanic dude, we'll be fine.
Would you guys, going off of that, Gabby, I mean, question, would you, if you didn't know your significant other now, would you guys date outside of your culture? Because
Ooh.
I personally, I would not. Like, I don't think I could not marry someone that wasn't Hispanic. And obviously I would ideally would have want them to be Cuban, and my girlfriend is Cuban. How lucky am I? But but before I met her, I was like, I definitely I see myself with someone Hispanic. Ideally, I would want them to be Cuban, because that's a big part of myself and my identity of being Cuban, and my culture and my food. And while it's not difficult to, integrate someone else who's not part of that culture, but being together with someone who already knows that culture and can celebrate and just jump right in with that same energy and enthusiasm is really, it's amazing. It's really awesome.
It's easier.
Yes.
It definitely makes everything easier
Yes.
because you're not like translating back and forth, like jokes get lost in translation.
Right.
I totally get that.
Right.
In my case, I feel like I'm just so diverse. Like at one point, people call me Mrs. Worldwide, legit. That I could envision myself with like an Indian guy because I'm like very into like Bollywood. Like part of my family is Sikh. I could envision myself with like an Arab guy, even though the whole machismo thing is very prevalent in that culture as well. I could see myself with a Hispanic guy. I always envision myself with someone who is like very culturally aware and could speak multiple languages. So even if they could understand Spanish, that would be okay with me. But I'm very thankful that I found Nacho. Like I've learned to appreciate Venezuelan culture a lot more. Like I've always had a thing legit for Argentinian/Venezuelan guys. I don't know if it's the accent thing or like I don't know what it is. Nacho's both somehow. I don't know like how this
Wow,
all
qué
happened, but
milagro. What are the chances?
I know. But Yeah, I've learned a lot about Venezuelan culture, and I know how to make arepas now. Even though they don't come out as circular as I would like them to, disclaimer, like I still
Oh,
can't get the patty right, but it tastes delicious.
oh man.
uh,
For the
yeah,
record, I never
that.
thought that you'd end up with a Hispanic dude. I totally thought it'd be an
Really?
Arab, but
Well,
it's
yeah,
just
no.
for the record, Dani is truly diverse. Like she appreciates everyone in their culture. So I'm intrigued that you're with a Hispanic guy now. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Like, what?
What about you, Gabby?
I you know what? I'm gonna speak from experience here. I've dated a few guys who are of different cultures, and to be honest, some of it was like, oh my gosh, you're a Latina, that's awesome. So I think they like put
Mm.
emphasis because I was so proud of my culture, so it was a little weird. Um, but I think I
Interesting.
would date like another culture if I wasn't in this relationship. But for me, it wasn't just like nationality or heritage. It was like the machismo aspect that I really needed to focus on. And like if they were
Mhm.
going to like fetishize my heritage, my culture, because I would get meet some guys and they're like, oh, I love Latinas. And I'm like, oh, what do you love about them? Like, what is it? And it's, oh, nothing good, cool, all right, or like nothing
Mhm.
substantial. So that was kind of always the weird part about me, like going beyond the Hispanic community. I low key, sorry, Manny, can't relate. I low key didn't want to date a Cuban because that was like
Too
off
loud.
my list. Too loud, no.
Lol.
For me, it was like again the machismo thing. Like I didn't know how that was gonna turn out, and I'm like, my
Yes.
parents would love it if I
Right.
ended up with someone in Miami because it'd be a lot easier to go home. Like when you
Right.
date someone who's from a different city, you're like navigating like, oh, splitting the holidays. We each also live in a different town. Like how are we getting our families together?
That's
Like it's super hard.
it's a
But
struggle.
that being said, like I never thought I'd end up with a Panamanian. There's so few of us out here and I'm part Panamanian. So it's been really cool to like explore that culture and see it. And apart from that, Lewis didn't know how to play dominoes. He did not know like Cuban pastelitos. Like it's been a journey, y'all. Like I've really had to
Oh, that's
educate
I
cute.
love
him,
That's
it.
cute.
but he's getting there. So he's on like the border of like he's teaching me about his culture, but there's familiarity and same for the other way around.
Guys, I want to pose one last question before we might be wrapping up soon. Do you believe in soulmates?
Ah,
Mhm.
I love that question, and I've always gone back and forth on this, but I think I have a my explanation is super long, dude. It really is. It's
Give
like
us a
I
condensed
do, but
version,
I
Danny.
believe
Nah, I'm
condensed version is I do, but I think that there's certain people at different points in your life, and if you miss that person during that point in your life, I think that that wasn't your soulmate, and you can still find that person in another point in your life.
no, you need to elaborate.
I believe in destiny.
Okay, so the title soulmate is a thing, but the person isn't the same always. Like you can have different soulmates at different parts of your life. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, I'm going to explain it because it's confusing. So, okay, say that when you're in second grade, right? You're innocent, you're little. I'm giving like different explanations. So, you're little, you like someone, maybe that other person liked you back. Maybe that could have been your forever because that can happen in certain situations, but
I
it
get what
wasn't the
you're saying.
time or whatever,
Right.
and then you miss your chance. But then when you're older and you find that other person, like then that person becomes your soulmate, if that makes sense. Like when it's the right time, the right place, the right
Okay,
mindset for both,
got it.
that
So you're
becomes your
not
soulmate.
out like you're not ruling out that the possibility could like you could have met a soulmate at some other
Right,
time,
that it
but it takes more than just
right.
meeting them. It's not like love at first sight or something. It's like
Interesting.
other factors have to
Exactly.
align.
Yes, I don't believe in love at first sight, but I do believe in meeting someone and knowing that they're going to mean something to you.
I like that. I think honestly, I think that's what happened with me and Lewis is that like he like randomly walked in where I was volunteering one day and I was like, okay, cool. Like weird that I don't know you. Because he was in a frat and I was in a sorority and work and like those groups were close. Like never seen him before, cool. And then I kept seeing him and I'm like, oh, he's gonna be like a reoccurring figure in my life. And then here we are. But uh short answer to the soulmate question, nah. Sorry, Dani. Corny stuff. My best friend says we're soulmates. Um honestly, if I had to pick a soulmate, Shiksu, if you're listening, it would be Shiksu Ricardo. Because like choosing to be in someone's life not for romantic, like for purely platonic reasons, I think is like just as valuable. But I just think the soulmate thing, like, you meet so many people, there's so many other fish in the sea, you never know where you're going to end up. Life is crazy. I think that, yeah, I do believe everything happens for a reason, but I don't think that reason is because that's the one person you're supposed to be with. I do think that you'll, like, in everything in life, if you made this decision versus that decision, you are going to turn out okay. And I also don't believe in like regrets, or hindsight is 2020, but you wouldn't have done anything differently personally. Like, there's a reason why you made that decision and did that thing at that certain time, and all you can do is like move forward. And that's how I feel about soulmates. Like, if you weren't meant to meet someone, then you didn't miss out on a soulmate. You just weren't meant to meet them. And then if you do get with someone, and some people tell me like, oh, I got a divorce, or I had kids with this person, then I realized like years down the line, I decided to get married to someone else. Or some people don't get married at all. Like, I just don't think it's because they missed out on meeting someone, or because they had to wait a little longer for the soulmate. I just think that it was just an order, like a domino effect of life decisions.
Right. It just happened because it happened. Before I was in this relationship, I didn't believe in soulmates. I kind of had the same thinking as you, Gabby. It's like, what's going to happen is going to happen. Decisions were made, the domino effect of time, you're in this place because of decisions you've made. You met who you met. But honestly, I've never I've never felt like this towards anyone else, like with my girlfriend right now. And stuff. And honestly, she's so amazing, and like she's anything I would have ever imagined my future partner in life to be, where she has the same culture and we have so many things in common. And if it wasn't for us going to the same gym around the same time, I could have been somewhere else, she could have been somewhere else. And in that moment, it just happened. And I feel like it was kind of meant to be a little bit. But I know that sounds really cheesy, and that's so
No, it's what you feel. I think that love in and of itself is cheesy, okay? Like, let's get over it. Like,
right, you're right.
once you're in love, like, that's what it is. Own up to it. It's fine. We all go through it. I feel similarly, Manny. Like, I think that I never truly loved anyone the way that I like love
Y'all
naturally.
are getting
Legit.
corny.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, legit. Like, I think what I felt toward other people in the past was lust. It was like I was infatuated by who they were, who I thought they were, what they represented in my head. But with Nacho, I feel like, I don't know, like he's my partner. Like, we share like everything together. I feel like we balance each other out. We like complement each other. We never step in each other's toes. Like, we don't ever make the other person feel like inferior, or like there's no machismo role in this at all. Like, it's very, I don't know, it's peaceful, it's peaceful. And I think that's the best feeling, when you feel like, okay, you, not that you're not enough, because going back to that feeling of like, oh, like, I don't think I've ever felt like not enough, but it's like, I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to show, like, I don't know, like, I can just be myself around you without, putting my makeup on or dressing up or playing the part or trying to be super, outgoing all the time. Like, if I want to be in a funk because I had a bad day at work, that's fine. Like, I know he's going to accept me and understand where I'm coming from, instead of making me feel like even worse about myself, which I feel like, unfortunately, that's the case for a lot of relationships. Until you realize that that's not healthy. But.
So I guess now to transition to our last point, if you had one piece of personal advice that you've learned, what would it be? What would you tell someone else just starting out fresh in the honeymoon stage?
I guess for me, it would be to genuinely give it a shot. Don't second guess yourself. Don't shoot your own shot, because I think that happened to me personally a lot, that I would always find the reasons why not to, instead of the reasons why it could work. And you might just surprise yourself. Like, go into it with an open mind, with an open space. Stop holding on to your past, thinking that things are going to change, or that they're going to come back, or like what I think it was what Manny said, that, or Gabby said, that if it didn't work out in the past, there's a reason for it, and you need to trust that things happen for a reason. And I do think that you can have strong connections with a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's the ones that stick around and show you who they truly are, and that they show you that they want to be with you. I think that's super important, that they express that and that you're on the same playing field.
I'm gonna give a more tough love answer. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it because I just thought of this really good, and I've been wanting to drop this little statistic all episode that 40 to 50% of marriages in America end in divorce. That means half of your friends might possibly be divorced by the end of your lifetime, which is pretty sad. But I did. This is a
Yikes.
happy. This is a happy
Wait, that
episode.
statistic is based on what year though? Because I do think that relationships have evolved and people aren't just getting
This
married like
is-
they used to as
No,
like
it's a pretty
early
common
on.
stat that keeps
Yeah,
going up.
it's a common stat. Yeah. And this is just obviously the States.
Mhm.
With that being said, you know, when you're starting, and I don't think there is such thing as honeymoon. Now, you just said honeymoon phase, and that we can have another argument about that because I feel like,
Really?
yeah, I feel like you should always feel like you're in the honeymoon stage. Like, why do you know, like, Gabby,
Because he's still in the honeymoon stage.
Gabby,
But I could argue that I'm still in the honeymoon
Gabby,
stage.
Y'all
Gabby's
are.
nodding. Whatever.
Wait, how long does it last? I thought after
I'm not
a
getting
year.
over it. Like, we're not discussing that. Next. Manny, finish your point.
Okay. Anyways, with that being said, that over 40 to 50% of marriages end up in divorce. You know, being in a relationship is not, I don't think it's easy. And if you guys want to say it's easy, correct me if I'm wrong. But it's going to take effort from both of you guys. Have good communication, be honest, and enjoy the other person's presence, that you can feel like you can grow. And like Dani said, be yourself without having to put on a mask and put on and say certain things, you know, that you can be yourself 100%.
I like those points. I'll leave you all with mine that I've learned a lot. You can ask your friends for all the advice in the world, but they're not in your relationship. That's not to say keep your relationship so private, because I think it is important for other people to know where you're at too, because your friends are going to be the ones to tell you if something's not right or if something's too good. Like maybe you are taking a mishap in a relationship, making a mountain out of a molehill, and you might need that friend to be like, remember, so and so had been good to you in XYZ ways. But that being said, their words aren't gold. So have friends while you're still in a relationship and remember to lean on them. And when the time does come, and I personally do not get in arguments a lot with Lewis, and I think it's because we are both solution oriented people. So fight in a productive way. It's not enough to call each other names or to like just get frustrated with one another. And it's good to reflect upon oneself and realize I'm hot-headed. This is me talking to myself now. I'm hot-headed, or I lashed out for no reason relating to that person. And it's important to make sure, like, if you're arguing about something that you feel is important in the relationship, to come out of it saying, like, what are we going to do about it? And what's the next step? And if the next step is we need to take a breather, let's pick up the conversation tomorrow, that's still more productive than going to bed angry. And I think that's the most important out of all. Like, don't don't leave a conversation angry, upset, sad. Talk about it until you feel like there could be a resolution, even if it's going to take some time. Because at the end of the day, like, intertwining people's lives is not easy. And as we all know, we all live our own lives and we all deal with things in our own head. So someone who's willing to want to do that with you and have you as part of their lives, like, don't take that for granted either.
That was honestly from the
That's so
person with the
good.
most experience. That was great. Like, that was
That
so
gives me
good.
hope.
Yes,
Thank
that
you.
was so good. Thank you for dropping the wisdom on us. Please give us
Yeah.
more, Gabby.
I may or may not write a
Wait,
book.
I have a. Oh my God, yes, please. And also, give us people that are doing long distance at the moment a piece of advice. Like, how did you make it work? How are you making it work? What's your secret?
Have a life beyond your relationship. High key. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, if you're only going, like, you work a long day and the only thing you're looking forward to is FaceTiming your significant other, like, yes, you want to do that, but do you want to do that every single day? What life are you building when they're not around? Like, you want to make it sweeter when they are around. And when they are, like, when you're having that face-to-face time, again, don't take it for granted, but also, like, in all honesty, don't mess around. Like, you have committed to long distance. You have committed to a person who is understanding that they're not going to be right next to you every single moment of every single day. That doesn't mean you can't go out and have fun or go meet new people, but understand what may be considered a temptation is not something as permanent as what you're investing in. So I think that's I'm just gonna be candid. Like, I think a lot of people mess up long distance because they're like, I'm not feeling it anymore, or whatever. And that goes back to like my commitment thing. Like, when I'm committed, I stay committed and I want something, and I know that person is my person. So if you're making a commitment solely because it's convenient, because someone's around, like, you need to reevaluate. Because at some point in time, even with friends, like, being a friend or being a significant other is a lot more than just being around.
For sure. Love
So with that,
I agree.
with that being said, this is our disclaimer. We are not experts. We only spoke to you regarding our experience, and we brought some, a little expert advice here and there because we did do our research. But we do recognize that there's a lot of different types of relationships and a lot of different challenges and things that you have to navigate. So if you do want our faux expert advice, go ahead and hit us up on Instagram at Oye Let's Talk Podcast. You can slide into the DMs or drop a comment saying like best advice is XYZ. We'll take it into consideration, maybe revisit this episode in a little bit since, we're all in relationships and we all want something to talk about later. Y'all, I don't know. This was a great episode. I learned a lot about you. So that being said, you can go learn a lot about your significant other or the person that you're hoping to snatch. Just don't forget to lean in and say, Oye, let's talk about us to keep that relationship healthy.